Now, one of the biggest moments came early when the defense asked the judge to declare a mistrial. The motion rejected. We also heard from a former stylist at Diddy's company. Now, he testified that Diddy threatened to leak sex tapes of her online. He said he saw Diddy beat his friend Cassie and heard him vow to bury her music if she didn't do what he said. The stylist's name is Deonte Nash, and he gave specific examples of how Diddy used his power over Cassie's career, testifying, quote, Diddy told her that one time if she keeps having a smart-ass mouth, her little mixtape won't be coming out. Nash said Diddy broke a promise to monetize one of Cassie's mixtapes, even though it was a top download when released for free. Nash testified that he thinks only about 10%, and he was being generous there, of Cassie's music ever saw the light of day. But while Diddy was allegedly holding back her songs, Nash said Diddy was threatening to expose her sex tapes. He testified about one incident when Diddy pushed Cassie out of her apartment. She and Nash drove away, but then Diddy called and demanded they pull over. The prosecutor asked Nash, what did you hear Mr. Combs say when he came up to the car window? Nash answers that she effed up and that he was going to put her sex tapes on the internet. He was going to release them on schedule, and that he was going to first start by sending them to her parents' jobs, and he was going to get them fired. Nash told Cassie to let Diddy release the tapes because he'd be on them too. The prosecutor asked, how did Cassie respond when you said that Puff was on the videos as well? Well, she said that he wasn't on the videos, that it was him taping her with other guys. And Nash testified that Cassie told him she didn't want to have sex with the other men, but she did it because Diddy wanted her to. Nash's testimony wasn't the only big moment in court today. Even before lunch, the defense pushed the judge to declare a mistrial. Why? Well, the defense was not happy with the prosecution for questioning an arson investigator when the witness told the jury that fingerprint evidence from Kid Cudi's home was destroyed without his authorization. The defense argued the prosecution was suggesting that Diddy was somehow responsible for destroying it, and that intimation would not be enough to unring the bell. The judge denied the mistrial motion, but told the jury to ignore the testimony. One of Diddy's lawyers told the judge, there is no way to unring this bell. One thing that we're going to hear about from Wagmeister on the testimony of Deonte Nash was about how this element of control, right? They need to talk about the control because, you know, for sex trafficking cases, you got to have this coercion, this fraud, these threats. Jennifer, there was a moment throughout the testimony where he talked about Diddy's control over Cassidy. Did they move the needle, though?
They did. I actually thought they had a good day today because she testified, of course, that she did feel coerced. And there has been a series of witnesses who were corroborating her in certain respects. But this witness I thought was really powerful because he got down to specifics, that she was told that her music wouldn't come out, that her career would be stalled, that she was told that the sex tapes would be released. It would ruin her reputation. So this control, it's not just a vague thing. It's like a concrete thing. These are the specific ways in which I saw him controlling her. I thought that was very powerful.
I mean, you agree?
Yeah, and I also think, look, he corroborated the physical violence, but it was a step further than that. He talked about times when Deonte saw Diddy come to find Cassie with like 5 or 6 of these security guards that we've heard so much about. The intimidation factor, that she was being beaten, that she was trying to hide from him, and he was hunting her down and finding her. So that speaks to this element of coercion, force, fraud, and coercion, which is in the sex trafficking statute, that she was living under this threat during this period of time. And to me, that really moved the needle on that aspect of the case.
He was talking about that, right? I mean, he was describing how, I mean, just to paraphrase, she had nowhere to run. She tried to go to a hotel. And she was supposed to call Deonte on the phone when she got to the safe house, this hotel. When she called, Diddy saw the phone and saw the hotel pop up. They then went to the hotel and told him to go get her. I mean, at one point she describes even perhaps taking drastic steps.
Yes, and you know, now that my mic is working, I can read you part of this direct testimony from Deonte Nash, which is actually talking about that instance that you're referencing, Laura, but before. So he speaks about how Diddy shows up to his home and start searching for Cassie. Here's what he said, quote, Puff came in and he was like, where the F is she? He started looking all around my house, in the closets. He went in the oven. I don't know why he looked in the oven. He asked me where she was. Then when the prosecutor said, who is she? He clarified that it's Cassie. And then after he looked around his house, then he asked for his car keys and took his phone. So as Misty said, it feels like there was this culture of fear and monitoring and intimidation, at least according to Deonte Nash's testimony. And again, he was someone who was not just inside Combs's and Cassie's inner circle as a stylist, he was one of Cassie's best friends. So he really was hearing from her in real time what she perceived was happening.
And they're still very close, right?
Very close. In fact, he said that he spoke to her yesterday to congratulate her for the birth of her baby boy, which is really kind of an incredible turn of events after her testimony that we saw across the course of 4 days. Of course, she was very pregnant when she testified, but Deonte Nash was asked about how close he was with Cassie still, and he said, we're very close. You know, I spoke to her yesterday. He was also, by the way, asked if he still speaks to Combs, and he did admit that he has stayed in touch with him. He said it in a very nonchalant way, basically like, of course I would talk to him. He's Sean Combs. And when asked how he feels about him being there today in court, he said, I don't hate him. It's not in me.
It was an amazing moment. And just the idea of all the people that Misty was talking about who were there. I mean, security is ever present when you're talking about any of these allegations. In building the enterprise, the prosecution is trying to show the inner circle and people who worked for Bad Boy more broadly. They weren't just doing maybe legitimate work on the different entities, but they were also the right-hand men and sometimes women, they allege, of Sean Diddy Combs. But what about the fact that this witness is an employee, and he, along with another person who was named a former chief of staff, they were trying to help her escape through the side. Does that undermine that the whole enterprise was working in cahoots with Sean?
So here's my view. There's no question that Nash furthers the narrative with respect to control, with regard to abuse, and with regard to coercion. No question about it. The bruising, the weekly visits in the hotel she didn't want to do. The issue with me is the causal relationship between his abusiveness, his coercive, his need for control. How's your hair? How's your makeup? What are you wearing today? Where are you? I'm going to look for you in this house, even in an oven, right? Because I'm just so maniacal. But is that...
And that irrational part might undercut it, you're saying?
Yes. But is there a causal connection between his irrationality, his jealousy, his outrage, his rage, and his just being inhumane, and him coercing her to engage in this sexual activity?
What about the threats to expose her tapes and also to get her parents fired as well?
Yes, but is that because, right, is that because you're not going to do a freak off with me? Is there a direct connection between, hey, I'm going to expose these tapes, I'm going to get your parents fired, I'm going to extort $20,000 from your parents, etc.? Is that because you come to this freak off with me or else? And that's the issue. You got to establish his conduct, maniacal, radical, horrific, inhumane, indecent. But is that because I want you to freak off with me? And if you establish that connection and the jury gets it, it's one thing. If you just show that he's a maniac who's doing horrible things because he's jealous, that's quite another.
Well, you know, on the 29th birthday party, there was testimony that she had gone to a club with her friends. And Deonte Nash testifies that Cassie is essentially persuaded and almost browbeaten. And she's saying, I want to have fun with my friends. I don't want to do the freak off. And at one point he says that he hears Diddy say, and I'm paraphrasing here, I do all this stuff for you and you can't do this one effing thing for me, F you. That was how they tried to thread the needle about the pressure about the freak offs. Does that address Joey's claim, or is that still not enough?
You know, I think it doesn't have to be so surgical, right? I mean, I think if you have a relationship where there's all this pressure, all this coercion, day in and day out, she doesn't really control her own life, he controls her life, and then he makes these demands on her, including these sex parties, part of which was the trafficking, right, element. I think that's going to be good enough for the jury to say we're going to find the sex trafficking because of the kind of totality of circumstances of their relationship. But I do think that because of the relationship and how long it lasted and how much she wanted it to be more serious, the jury is going to have to decide that the coercion was really coercion. I mean, they have to get over that hurdle. But I don't think it has to be so specific of like, at this time, right before the freak off, it has to be coercive.
Well,